Yeah. You ain't see me activated. You better hope that you never see me agitated.
Alright, welcome back. Hey, so I just want to jump back in. That last video was unfortunately not recorded in the best quality video, so hopefully this is a little bit better. But I will continually do my best to improve on the video and audio quality. I hope that this is reasonable for you for now. But that said, camel case versus Pascal is just something I kind of wrote in here, but sometimes you're going to see a little difference between what we learn and what's written here, only slightly. And here I just kind of added a couple others so you can get the general idea of what I wanted to address, which is in programming you're going to see all kinds of different ways of writing things, and in HTML it's one way, and then in React it's another way, and in JavaScript it's a whole nother way. And so just kind of getting the idea of what I'm talking about when I mention these, I just created a couple of quick little examples. And so you have Pascal case, camel case, kebab case, and snake case. And so with Pascal, you would identify objects, or anytime you're naming something, the naming convention would be to start with an uppercase on the very first word, and then every word after that you begin with an uppercase letter to identify the next word. And so as you can see here, that's what's going on there. Then camel case is just like that, except for you begin with a lowercase on the initial letter, and then uppercase on the first word you get a lowercase letter, and then on the rest of words you continue that pattern where every initial letter on every word is uppercase. And then kebab case is with hyphens, and then snake case would be with underscores. And that's some different ways that you might find things named. Like a lot of files will have that, and sometimes double underscore even means something. I don't see too often hyphens except for just when people want to, I guess. But definitely I see Pascal and camel case in different situations. We'll kind of identify what those are as we go along and what those look like as we go along. But just so you know, when I say, okay, this one's Pascal, this one's camel, this one's kebab, snake, whatever, you automatically are going to understand what that means. And so just very quick, wanted to go over that. And then let's just very briefly talk about the code editor. So the one that I'm in is Rider. It's JetBrains Rider. This particular editor is my favorite. I've used Sublime and paid a $70 fee, so I didn't get their little advertisement that they had, and then which was Sublime 3, I believe. And then I moved over to VS Code because that was a popular one, and it was free to use as long as you're using it locally on your own machine for your own programming. But once you become an enterprise or a company and you make so much money, I think they do start to charge or something like that. Don't quote me on that. Just, definitely go check it out. VS Code is what you want to search for. So VS Code. But Visual Studio Code is what it is. And it is, I believe, a Microsoft item, if I'm not mistaken. And it has this symbol here, Visual Studio. My Mac came with like a free Mac version trial, and my trial expired, and I never even opened it. But the reason for that is because I like Rider. VS Code is free, so if you're not sure if you're really going to stick with programming, maybe you don't waste the little bit over $100 that it's going to cost for Rider, which is what I personally am using here. But Rider is definitely the one that's going to give you, in my opinion, more capabilities and out of the box as far as what it does for you. But it also has been more helpful, and maybe it's been so long that I've used VS Code that I just don't know anymore. But Rider is really excellent at helping you figure out, hey, this piece of code is incorrectly written, and it's going to underline it and identify it in a way that's really going to stand out to you, especially when it's going to be a bigger deal versus not a bigger deal. Like, hey, this one's maybe a syntax error. It's still technically going to work, but maybe you should think about how you're writing it, versus, hey, this is an operational error that is going to error out and cause the program to fail and not build. And so those are very different things. and I found Rider, when you're trying to learn how to program, Rider really helps bring along that learning a lot faster. I started out HTML, CSS, JavaScript myself, but then I moved into React, and I did C# by myself with Unity. And when I only had Rider doing the C# portion, whereas I was working with mostly VS Code or Sublime Text with the other ones. And this one just blew it out of the water as far as like just identifying what I've done mistakenly, as we all tend to do as we're learning to program. We just miss a semicolon here, or maybe we syntactically wrote it wrong or whatever. But this program's been great about helping identify that and bringing me along and understanding, hey, not only is this wrong, but then it'll give you a little pop-up box saying, here's what you want to think about, and it'll link you to the document over at, I can't think of it. Anyway, it'll link the document where you can click on the link and follow it and find what the actual write-up on how to use this item, how to use this particular part of the program, or what syntax to use and everything like that. So I really speak highly of this for, just because that's my experience. But anything you use is fine, really. Anything you can do in this, you're going to be able to do, in Visual Studio Code in some capacity, including getting a terminal and things of that nature, where you can actually write on, access your machine, your computer, to execute commands and run programs and things of that nature. I want to go over last thing for this video before we actually get started in the next video, get like actually really understanding code and getting into HTML. The biggest tips when you're going, every time you reach for this mouse, it's like it's a time suck. Really, it is. It just is. So the better you can learn to use your mouse to like navigate and make selections. Like if I just want to select a single word or move word by word, I can hold Option on my Mac, or I can hold Option and Shift to actually highlight things, or I can hold Command and Shift to go to the end of line, let go of Shift, and I can navigate forward and backward and across and like do whatever highlights that I need to do. I can use Control C to copy, Control V to paste, Command Z or Command Shift Z to do or undo, things of that nature. But then there's also Command Option L will let me open up my file system and close my file system, and Command Tab will let me actually access different applications on my computer. And then like here, if I broke this off, if I said, okay, I'm over at Visual Studio Code, and then hey, I have these two windows open. If I Command Tab, well, it switches me between the program, but not between Windows and Google Chrome. And in order to do that, I would do Command tilde in order to switch between the actual windows within the same program. But if I wanted to continue to switch between the programs, then I would go back to Command Tab. And, it's such a better way of, just Command W. That closes the window. There's all sorts of ones that you can do, and if you're on a Windows operating machine, using Control and a lot of those commands that I just mentioned versus Command on Mac, you're going to find a lot of those have identical, if not very similar actions, and you can look them up. But the whole point is, if you're trying to figure out how to do something, you find yourself reaching for the mouse, you can either look up on YouTube and pick any video you like, and there's going to be videos out there on how to go mouseless. It's almost more effective just to do your favorite ones, and then have a piece of paper by your desk and say, okay, switch between Windows, Command Tab, switch between Windows on same application, Command tilde, and just have a list of those things that are the ones that you absolutely find yourself reaching for the mouse the most. And if you can eliminate that process, finding your finger placement on the keys and finding the clickability of the mouse and navigating, that's all going to become a lot easier the more that you can abandon the mouse. That said, I've already said this in the last one, but in my opinion, code along once, because you're going to experience like, hey, what he said didn't work for me. And then you're going to have to go back and figure out, a lot of times in my experience, I was wrong when I was learning, and I'm like, man, this guy must have written this years ago and it just doesn't work anymore. Or, I used to think these crazy things, but a lot of times I figured out that, oh yeah, it was just me. So, don't worry about that. Don't worry, get caught up in every detail. You do want to kind of code along, in my opinion, at least just one time, your first time through ever, and then you can abandon these videos forever, or even go and watch them, or whatever you want to do. But ultimately, don't worry about like, oh my gosh, I don't remember what happened 5 videos ago or 10 videos ago or whatever it is, because when you get going along in this, you're going to just need to know a couple of things like, hey, what is available? What can I do? And then you're going to be able to hop on Google and figure out what was the syntax that you're supposed to use to do that thing. And so a lot of this is learning to problem solve, which is good for you to code along with. But don't sit there and take notes for every little bit, in my opinion. That said, it's up to you. Obviously, like, you understand how you learn, so I encourage you to do whatever it is that you do best, right? So I just want to give you my personal tips, how I personally learned how to code, for what that's worth. So the next video from here is just going to jump. We're going to get rid of all this here, and we are going to jump straight into the actual HTML and programming, get past all this introductory stuff. But I look forward to catching you guys then. All right. Thanks for tuning in. See ya.